A flash drive with my photo on it, left by a boy who never came back. A basement recording that made us shut it off and never go back down. And a closet door that kept falling open in the middle of the night because someone was inside it, waiting. I'm going to tell you all three. I'm a college freshman now, but this story starts back in my senior year of high school. Though coming home for a funeral this past week is what brought it all rushing back. It was a regular Tuesday during study hall. I'd hauled myself to the library to work on a computer science assignment, since my laptop at home didn't have JCreator installed. The library was its usual hollow fluorescent self, except for one boy already seated at one of the only two computers that had the software. I knew who he was. Everyone did, in the vague way you know someone you've never actually spoken to. He was impossible to miss. Impossibly tall, with skin so pale it looked like he'd been assembled indoors. His hair was long and black, swept across one eye like a curtain he'd never bothered to open. He wore a ripped anti-flag jacket over a t-shirt, dark jeans, and Doc Martens that looked like they'd outlive us both. In computer science class, he never spoke. I'd never once seen him with another person. I sat down in the empty chair beside him. He looked up at me like I'd just confessed to a crime. I immediately dropped my gaze and began rummaging through my bag with great urgency, as though searching for something extremely important that did not exist. Head still down, I heard it, a low chuckle, and then a mumble barely audible, "Of course." I went still. After a moment, I decided he was probably just cursing at his code and let it go. I straightened up, typed in my login credentials, and decided that someone had to say something. "She assigns way too much homework," I said. "I can barely keep up." His eyes didn't leave the screen. "You want the answers, don't you? It wasn't really a question." I laughed. "No, I'm good. I won't learn anything that way." Normally, honestly, I would have said yes, but I wasn't about to invite that stare again. It was the kind of eye contact that made you feel like someone was reading the fine print of your soul. He laughed, this strange, quiet laugh that made me close my eyes and cringe slightly. When I opened them, he was gone. What he left behind was a flash drive plugged into the computer. I waited 10 minutes, watching the door, but study hall ended at 1, and it was already 10:02. I pulled it out, dropped it into my bag, and told myself I'd return it tomorrow in class. It was a pretty great flash drive, actually. A Swiss Army knife with a USB built into the handle. I tossed it into a small box on the shelf above my bed and didn't think much more about it. Here's the thing, though. He never came back. At first, nobody worried. He had a reputation for absences, the kind of attendance record that becomes its own personality trait. But weeks passed. May arrived. Graduation loomed over everything like a friendly fog, and in the chaos of finals and prom and senioritis, one quiet boy's empty desk stopped being remarkable. I forgot about the flash drive entirely. Until 2 days ago, I was home for a funeral. I needed a flash drive for a business class PowerPoint and remembered, suddenly and completely, that I still had his. I found the little box above my bed without even having to look. I scanned it with Norton before opening anything. Clean. My plan was simple. Delete everything, use it for my file, move on. But I opened it first just to see what was there. The first folder was labeled Computer Science. Inside, every answer to every assignment we'd ever been given, neatly organized, complete. I sat with that for a second. Maybe he'd left it on purpose. Maybe he knew somehow that he wasn't coming back. And this was his strange, silent way of leaving something behind. I went back to the root folder. The second was labeled Music. I couldn't help it. I opened it. There were only 3 songs: Running on Empty, Jackson Browne, White Rabbit, Jefferson Airplane, Helter Skelter, The Beatles. Not what I expected. I don't know what I expected. The third folder had no name. Inside, a collection of AP literature essays, miscellaneous documents, the usual academic debris, and then one file titled The Best. I clicked it. It was a 10-page document. Scanned notebook paper, every line filled. Not with writing, exactly. just his name, first and last, over and over, page after page, in his own handwriting, nothing else. I closed it and kept going. There were photographs, pictures of the emergency escape plan posted on the back of every classroom door. 6 or 7 of them, different rooms, same red and white diagrams, a lit cigarette resting on the floor of what was clearly a school bathroom. A small pile of coins on that same bathroom floor, a yellow post-it note beside them, written in capital letters, "Chump Change." And then, a photo of me. I was sitting in what looked like my English class reading, taken from a distance, like from the doorway, or maybe a phone slipped between lockers. He was never in that class. I don't know when it was taken. I don't know how long he'd had it. The last file was called Rest in Peace 2. I opened it. It was empty. I've been sitting with all of this for 2 days, and I still don't know what to make of it. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was strange and bored, and this is just what strange, bored teenagers leave behind on forgotten flash drives. Maybe he dropped it by accident and never came back because he'd already stopped showing up, and that was that. Or maybe it wasn't nothing. I still have the flash drive. I haven't deleted anything. This happened a few years ago. I was 12 at the time, and so was my friend, who I'll call Allie. We're both 15 now, and I still think about it more than I'd like to admit. Allie and I have been inseparable since 2nd grade. Every weekend, every free afternoon, we were together. We shared a lot of interests, but the one that consumed us most back then was the paranormal. Ghosts, hauntings, things that go unexplained. We were obsessed. Every house either of us had ever set foot in, we were convinced was haunted. We'd conduct ghost hunts inspired by the TV shows we watched religiously, creeping through dark hallways with a flip phone held out in front of us to capture any stray sounds. We wanted so badly to find something, to prove something. There was one night, though, that I wish we hadn't. It was around midnight on a weekend. The kind of midnight that only exists when you're 12 and running purely on sugar and the thrill of staying up too late. Neither of us could sleep, so we decided to do a proper ghost hunt through my house. This time, we upgraded our equipment. We had the flip phone for audio, but we also borrowed my dad's touchscreen to actually film. It was the first time we'd ever recorded video on a ghost hunt. It was also the last. My basement wasn't like most. The house was very old, built in a time when basements were designed less for recreation and more for something harder to name. At the bottom of the stairs was a large main room we used for storage, dimly lit and crowded with the kind of clutter that accumulates over decades. Beyond that was a medium-sized laundry room, washer, dryer, bare concrete walls, and beyond that, at the very farthest end, was a small room that nobody in my family ever used. It looked like a cell. No one ever said out loud that it scared them. No one had to. Allie and I went down the stairs with the camera rolling and the flip phone recording, asking the questions we'd memorized from television. Is there anybody here? Give us a sign if you're present. Our voices echoed faintly off the old walls. Eventually, we ran out of steam, the way you do when nothing seems to be happening, and we headed back upstairs to my room to review the footage. We were giddy with it. This felt like a real investigation. We'd filmed it. We huddled over the screen together and watched. Nothing. No orbs, no shadows, no unexplained movements. The audio was quiet except for our own voices and footsteps. We were disappointed in the way only 12-year-olds on a ghost hunt can be. Genuinely deflated. Normally, we would have manufactured something, convinced ourselves a creak in the floor was a spectral footstep, or that a smudge on the lens was an apparition. But we'd been so excited about having actual video that we didn't even want to do that. It felt like cheating. We gave up on sleep and played board games for a while instead. Then, somewhere in the early hours of the morning, we agreed to watch it one more time. Just in case we'd missed something. We had. I don't know how to explain what happened when we pressed play the second time, except to say that something felt different. The excitement was gone, and without it, something else came through. A kind of heaviness that seemed to rise off the screen. We both felt it without saying anything. I remember glancing at Allie and seeing that her expression had changed, we kept watching. This happened a few years ago. I was 12 at the time, and so was my friend, who I'll call Allie. We're both 15 now, and I still think about it more than I'd like to admit. Allie and I have been inseparable since second grade. Every weekend, every free afternoon, we were together. We shared a lot of interests, but the one that consumed us most back then was the paranormal. Ghosts, hauntings, things that go unexplained. We were obsessed. Every house either of us had ever set foot in, we were convinced was haunted. We'd conduct ghost hunts inspired by the TV shows we watched religiously, creeping through dark hallways with a flip phone held out in front of us to capture any stray sounds. We wanted so badly to find something, to prove something. There was one night, though, that I wish we hadn't. It was around midnight on a weekend. The kind of midnight that only exists when you're 12 and running purely on sugar and the thrill of staying up too late. Neither of us could sleep, so we decided to do a proper ghost hunt through my house. This time, we upgraded our equipment. We had the flip phone for audio, but we also borrowed my dad's touchscreen to actually film. It was the first time we'd ever recorded video on a ghost hunt. It was also the last. My basement wasn't like most. The house was very old, built in a time when basements were designed less for recreation and more for something harder to name. At the bottom of the stairs was a large main room we used for storage, dimly lit and crowded with the kind of clutter that accumulates over decades. Beyond that was a medium-sized laundry room, washer, dryer, bare concrete walls. And beyond that, at the very farthest end, was a small room that nobody in my family ever used. It looked like a cell. We still talk about it, Allie and I. Sometimes one of us will bring it up, and the other will already know exactly what part they're thinking of. Sometimes I dream about it, those white eyes, looking through the screen like the camera was a window rather than a recording. I don't know what we saw. I don't know if it was something real or just two over-imaginative kids scaring themselves in the dark, but I know that we both saw it at the same moment and we both felt it. And whatever it was, it's never fully left me. I won't be going back. The storage closet in my room has never had a proper door. It's a large square opening cut into the wall beside my bed, and instead of hinges and a knob, it's sealed with a flat panel that fits snugly into the frame. No hardware, nothing holding it in place. You open it by gripping the edges and pulling. You close it by pressing it back until it sits flush with the wall. I was 19 when it started. The first morning, I woke up and found the door leaning against the wooden edge of my bed frame. I wasn't alarmed. It had happened before. Without hinges to hold it, the panel had always been prone to shifting. I pressed it back into the wall and went to school without giving it much thought. The second night, I woke up at 4 a.m, certain I'd heard something. I sat up in the dark and looked around the room. The door was leaning against my bed again. This time, I lingered on it a little longer before going back to sleep. My best explanation was that the edges of the frame were starting to wear down, the wood slowly losing the grip that kept the panel in place. I left the door where it was and told myself I'd fix it properly in the morning. The third night, I couldn't sleep at all. I lay in bed for at least 2 hours, rolling from one side to the other, chasing unconsciousness and not finding it. The room was quiet. The house was quiet. And then, a thump, heavy and immediate, and I didn't even have to look to know what it was. In the dark, I could already make out the shape of the panel, fallen open again. I stared at it. I was exhausted and frustrated and completely done. Fine, I thought. Leave it open. I don't care anymore. That's when I heard the plastic bag. A small sound, barely anything, just the faint rustle of a bag shifting inside the closet. The kind of sound you'd normally dismiss without a second thought. But there was no draft in the room, no air moving, no vent nearby, nothing that should have caused it. My heart stopped in a way I'd never felt before. I lay completely still, listening. Then, slowly, I reached out and flicked on the light. I looked into the open closet. Someone was inside it, looking back at me. He was there for maybe half a second before he reacted, before the light registered and he pulled back. pressing himself into the dark like he could disappear if he moved fast enough. Like I hadn't already seen him. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. My body made one single decision for me, and it bypassed every other option. Dad. I screamed it so loud, it didn't sound like my own voice. It took my father maybe 10 seconds to reach my room. 10 seconds that I spent completely frozen, eyes locked on the closet, unable to look away and unable to go anywhere. The moment he appeared in the doorway, I felt something release in my chest. I pointed at the closet. He looked at me. He looked at the closet, then he got down and crawled all the way inside. He came out alone. He told me I must have been half asleep, that I'd imagined it, that there was no one there. And the terrible thing was that I almost believed him, not because it was convincing, but because I wanted to. I wanted an explanation that would let me go back to sleep in my own bed. I couldn't do it though. The thought of lying back down in that room, 3 feet from that open closet, was something my body flatly refused. I grabbed a blanket and went down the hall to my parents' room, where I lay down on the floor and waited for my heartbeat to slow. I hadn't even come close to sleeping when I heard my bedroom door open. Down the hall, distinct and unmistakable, the sound of my door swinging open. Then footsteps, fast and deliberate, moving through the hall and hitting the stairs and running, all the way down and through the front of the house. And then the front door opened and slammed shut so hard the sound rang through every room. My parents heard it. They were already sitting up. That was the moment they believed me. We went after him, but he was gone. No trace, no sign of where he'd come from or where he went. It was only later that we pieced together where he'd been hiding, inside an empty container at the back of the closet, tucked far enough in that my father had missed him in the dark. He had been in there long enough to open that door. 3 nights in a row. I still don't know how long he'd been coming back.